All right, guys, welcome back. We're in chapter 12 of ALP AP Gov. And here, before we could jump into chapter 12, I want to talk about unit number 2 first. Our government institutions. We're talking about Congress, we're talking about the president, we're talking about bureaucracy, we're talking about the Supreme Court. And so this is going to be our most important unit of this semester together because so many of the questions on the AP test are coming from this unit. And I'll tell you what, I would not be shocked to see a ton of them come from this chapter on the Congress. So we'll pay close attention, a little bit more than we normally do on the Congress, all right? And so we're going to jump right in. We're going to talk about the House of Representatives first. House of Representatives is 435 members. That is not set by the Constitution, that is set by congressional law. 435 members, make sure you know that. And so just some little basic stuff. Representatives are based on population. We learned that back in chapter 2 in the Great Compromise. Set by population, that was part of the Virginia plan, the big state plan, becomes our House of Representatives. All congressmen are up for re-election every 2 years. They serve 2-year terms. The entire House is up every 2 years, or our next election is 2020. You have to be 25 years old. You have to be a citizen of the United States for at least 7 years, and you have to be a resident of the district that you are going to be serving, okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about the House of Representatives. Hip Hughes, our friend who we've seen some of his videos, and we've used some of his videos, Hip Hughes always calls the House of Representatives the mad dog, okay? The mad dog. And so here's why. They're going to have a ton of bite you in the butt powers, okay? If you've got a mad dog, okay, you don't want to put him on a big long leash. We got him on a short leash, a 2-year leash, okay? Because we're going to give some of the bigger powers to the House of Representatives, and we're going to talk about those as we go through. But let's establish right now the House of Representatives is our mad dog, okay? The House of Representatives is more centralized. It's supposed to be closer to the people. Under the original Constitution, it was the only federal seat that was elected directly by the people. The senators were not, the president was not, the judicial branch is not. It is only the House of Representatives. It is supposed to be the branch that is closest to the people. And so it is more centralized. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what all that means and why they're the mad dog and what powers they have, and all that stuff as we go through this chapter. But right now, the House of Representatives, they're our mad dog. Now, the Senate is our old wise man on the hill. It's going to deliberate a little bit slower, okay? They're sitting in their rocker, just kind of mulling things over a little bit. We're going to move a little bit more deliberately in the Senate, my friends. 100 members, 2 from every state, right? So that's how we're going to work things out here. This is the New Jersey plan based on equal representation for each state. Great compromise. Virginia, New Jersey, great compromise, Connecticut, you know all that stuff. 6-year terms for our senators, 30 years old, 9-year citizens, and you have to be a resident of the state that you are going to be serving for. It is oftentimes called the upper house, with the House of Representatives being called the lower house, of course. And there's a couple of different things, a couple of specific things that we really want to make sure we cover here on the Senate. First one is 17th Amendment. 17th Amendment says that we are going to start electing senators directly. We're electing them directly, not indirectly, by the state legislatures. That's how it was set up in the original Constitution. 17th Amendment changes that, and so we now have a second seat, 33 seats actually, the House, your representative, and then your 2 senators that are going to be elected directly by the people instead of just 1 seat. Okay, so that's a pretty substantial change. The 17th Amendment, got to know that one, make sure you know that. But the other big difference is, in the House of Representatives, 435 people. If we give everybody a chance to talk, they're going to talk forever, and we're going to get nothing done. The Senate is smaller, and so there's only 100 seats here, and therefore we give every senator the opportunity to talk. And if you have the floor, you have unlimited speaking power. This is the power of the filibuster. The filibuster means I have the floor. I've been recognized by the chair of the Senate, and so I can talk for as long as I want to talk. The floor is mine until I yield that. Now there are some rules to the filibuster, but basically, as long as I have the ability to have voice in my lungs, I can keep going, okay? I can read from the phone book. I can read from Great Expectations. I can read from whatever I want to read. I can say whatever I want to say. I don't have to stay specific to the bill even, okay? I can force them to either say, okay, we're going to move on to a different piece of legislation, or say, we're not going to call this up for a vote and we're going to adjourn, and therefore kill the bill that I am looking to stop from becoming a law. Now, the offense, the party that is in control isn't going to use this, okay? It's going to be the party that is not in control, because they're not going to have the votes to stop the bill on it or their own, and so this is a way for them to stop this. Remember, they're going to be more deliberate. They're the old wise men on the hill. Okay, so that's the Senate. 100 members, you got all this. All right, now the next thing that we want to know about the Senate is, we talked about the House. They're going to be up in 2020. The entire House will be up again in 2022. The entire House will be up again in 2024. That's not how the Senate works. Only 1/3 of the Senate at any one time is up for election, okay? And so in 2020, 33 senators will be elected. Okay, they'll be up for re-election or they'll be elected. 33, which means 67 senators are staying put. Okay, that means 2/3 of the Senate will remain the same. And that's huge. That slows down these waves of rebellion, maybe, that may be coming into our nation. Maybe if we think back to maybe pre-World War II in Germany, the fascism that swept the nation, and so they were able to take over. This is supposed to slow that down. The people who are there already can slow this from happening, and maybe over 2-4 years, we can slow everything down. So what's going to happen in 2020, we'll have 33 senators up for election. In 2022, we're going to have 34 senators up for election. In 2024, we'll have another 33, and then in 2026, those same ones who were up in 2020, they'll be up for re-election again. And so we just kind of slow that process down. We're making the process deliberate. We're trying to keep the status quo. It's got to be difficult to make changes, and that's done very intentionally by our founding fathers. Okay, so reapportionment. This is going to determine how many seats each state gets in the House of Representatives. It occurs every 10 years after the national census. The Constitution requires a census every 10 years, and basically what that is they're going to go out and they're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is how many people are living in the United States, and then they're going to count and say, this is how many live in Illinois, this is how many live in Pennsylvania, this is how many live in Delaware, and they're going to divvy out, here's how many you get based on the population of your state. And the reason for this is we want to make sure, remember that the House of Representatives is selected based on representation. Okay, and so we want to make sure that we know, did anybody move? Did we have a lot of people born? Did we have a lot of people die? Did they move from state to state? And so that every 10 years, we kind of reevaluate where should the seats go. And so we anticipate actually in 2020, Illinois losing a seat or two because of kind of a lot of people moving out of the state of Illinois after all the budget issues and et cetera that have been happening in Illinois. And so in 2020, when they count everybody in Illinois, there's a good chance that Illinois is not quite as represented as they once were, okay? So this happens every 10 years, reapportionment. And what we're going to have to do then is we have 435 members. This was, like I said, an act of law in 1929, and those 435 are going to be given out to everybody. Now, every state gets at least one. So Montana, Wyoming, they're going to get one representative, even though they probably don't have enough people to constitute one. Maybe they deserve like half of one, okay? But we're not going to cut somebody in half and just have them serve half of the people, okay? We're going to, every state gets one. And so we're going to move forward like that. Now, what's going to happen then is they're going to say, Illinois, here's how many you get. And then Illinois state legislatures are going to have to redraw the lines in Illinois based on that new census data. Here's how many people and where they're living, okay? And so they're going to redraw the district lines. They're redistricting. Okay, now redistricting is the actual act of redrawing the lines. This has to happen every 10 years to reflect where the population has moved to. However, gerrymandering is not redistricting, okay? It is not redistricting. Gerrymandering is drawing the lines to benefit or to hurt somebody. Maybe it's a political party, so maybe the Republicans are in control in Illinois, okay, and they're going to draw the lines so that their party wins more seats in the House of Representatives. Or maybe the Democrats are in charge and they're going to draw the lines to benefit their party. That would be gerrymandering. Maybe we have a lot of old white men and they want to make sure that no African Americans win a seat. Or maybe they want to make sure that no Jewish Americans win a seat, or Muslim Americans. And so they're going to draw the lines to make sure that neighborhoods like that are maybe split apart. And so they're going to force them to not be able to win a seat. And this is gerrymandering. They are drawing the lines in order to help themselves or to hurt someone else. So the requirements in drawing these districts is they have to be contiguous, which means they have to all be in one big section, okay? You can't like take 3 counties from near Chicago and then 2 counties from down by St. Louis and say, okay, those are a district. They have to be all together, okay? They have to have an equal number of inhabitants. So we have to separate those throughout the state, roughly the same amount of people. And then they have to be compact. So we can't just draw a line from, here's those 3 counties in Chicago, and then draw a line all the way down I-55, and then pick up those 2 counties in St. Louis. And say, oh, well, they're connected. See this long line here down I-55, they're connected. No, they have to be all kind of compact together, okay? So those are the 3 things, according to the Supreme Court, that we have to meet in order to redistrict, okay? And some strategies that have kind of emerged through the years are packing and cracking. We're going to work on these together in class, but let's kind of cover them really quick and easy right now. Packing would be concentrating the opposition into a few districts. So maybe African Americans in Illinois have made some gains and they're making up a larger part of our population. Well, what they might do, somebody who's against them, is they may try to draw the line so that we get as many of the African American community into one district where they're going to win 1 seat, but then they're not going to be able to compete in any other district, okay? Because we packed them all into one district, and so they get 1 seat, and the rest of Illinois is going to be all maybe white men, okay? And cracking would be the opposite of that. So maybe we have an area where if it were drawn, they would definitely get a seat, and instead what they're going to do is they're going to draw part of them into one district, part of them into another district, part of them into a 3rd district, or into a 4th or even a 5th district. And what's going to happen there is they're going to crack apart those districts so that no African Americans, or maybe no Democrats, or maybe no Jewish Americans, or whoever's being targeted cannot win a seat in the House of Representatives, and therefore they're not represented. So gerrymandering, important to know. We're going to study it a little bit in class. I'm not going to go any further right now, but important to make sure that you know what gerrymandering is. Remember, this is for the House of Representatives. It has no impact on the Senate. The Senate represents the entire state. Okay, so the person who's in office, so in our district right now, it's Adam Kinzinger is our representative in Congress. He would be, when he goes up for re-election in 2020, he would be known as the incumbent. The incumbent. He's the person who holds the office and is running for re-election. The person who, assuming somebody does run against him, would be the challenger then. Now, the incumbent has a huge advantage over the challenger. And if we look at the election results over the past, 50, 60 years, the incumbent wins almost all the time, both in the House and in the Senate. And there are some reasons for this, okay? The incumbents win because, first off, their advertising can be very different. They don't have to get known. They're already known. They're a congressman. They're a senator, okay? So they don't have to spend the first amount of money in their campaign to go out and say, hey, here's who I am, here's what I believe in, okay? Where somebody who's a challenger, they've got to get their name out there. They've got to get people to know who they are. And so that's the first step. So they've automatically got extra money that they can spend in other areas. They have credit claiming. They can use casework and pork barrel legislation to prop up their resume. They can say, hey, casework. Casework is what's done usually by the staffers of the congressman or a senator. And so, for example, maybe you are looking to get a sewer project done in your town, and so you talk to the congressman's aides and stuff, and so they help secure the money, and they talk to the congressman and they get this stuff done, and so they are going to be the ones who are in contact with you, and they're going to gather the information from you. This is all casework. Maybe you're having trouble with your Social Security checks, and so you want some help from the congressman, and so you call his office and say, hey, this isn't matching up. This is what I'm supposed to be getting, and I'm not getting anywhere with the Social Security office, and they can maybe intervene on your behalf. This is casework, and so if you are able to get what you want through that congressman, aren't you more likely to vote for him next time? And so he's going to say, hey, look what I was able to do for you. Please vote for me. Okay, and pork barrel then is going to be legislation that is aimed at a specific district. So maybe they want to build a bridge over the Illinois River, and that's going to help bridge the communities of Oglesby and LaSalle. We're going to build another bridge, and the semis are going to be able to use it, and it's going to cut commute times, etc. And so all of a sudden, the people in that community are like, "Oh, what a wonderful guy Adam Kinzinger is! He helped get us this bridge." Okay, and so they're going to come out and vote for him. He can say, "Look what I've done for you. Vote for me." Okay, or the challenger, what have they done for you? They've done nothing because they haven't had the opportunity to do so. Okay, position taking. The person who's challenging can say, this is how I'm going to vote, this is what I plan to do. But the person who the incumbent is, he can already say, this is how I've been voting all along. You can just look at my voting record and see this is what I'm going to continue to do. And so you know exactly what's going to happen. So what winds up happening is we generally get weaker opponents because they know there's a small chance that they're going to win. Okay, and in addition to that, oftentimes we get people running for the House of Representatives with no competition whatsoever. And so the last thing that I want to talk about here is just very, very briefly is the franking privilege. Now the franking privilege is legislation that allows congressmen to send communications to their constituents. Now they can't put on there, vote for Adam Kinzinger. But what they can do is they can say, here's Adam Kinzinger. Here are the things that he's doing right now for you, for his constituents. And so you see those things, and basically it comes out to be a piece of advertising. But the big thing is, it's free for him to send out as long as it's not a piece of campaign material. So as long as he doesn't say vote for Adam Kinzinger on there, he can send that out for free. The challenger has to pay for each of those things. And so we're going to wind up, the incumbent is just going to have more money at their disposal to put into where that's needed, where the challenger is just not going to have that. In addition, most interest groups are going to back the incumbent, because why am I going to pay and give money to this guy over here who probably isn't going to win? I'm going to give my money to the guy who might win, who's probably going to win, and therefore that money, hopefully he'll vote the way that I want him to vote in the future. So incumbent, the power of the incumbent, very, very, very important to know that the incumbent is almost always going to win, and know some reasons why, of course. Okay, so the duties of our legislatures. First, they're lawmakers, and they're supposed to be their first duty. But actually, they don't spend a lot of time doing that. They spend most of their time in committees. That's where the real work is going to get done. Underline that if you're taking notes. Committees is where the important work is done, okay? Most of the work is done here. We have a few different kinds of committees, and I want to talk about a few different kinds of committees in just a second. But the committees are crucial to the House of Representatives and to the Senate. We have them in both. The first kind of committee is the Standing Committee. This is, I believe, on page 370 in your book. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it's on page 370 in the Edwards book. There are several committees, and what a standing committee is basically is Um, it is a committee that is going to always be there. It's always going to be necessary, okay? And so it's there from Congress to Congress to Congress to Congress. Every time there's an election, it doesn't matter. That committee is still going to be there. A standing committee is a permanent committee, okay? And so maybe there's one on energy, maybe there's one on education, maybe there's one on transportation, veterans affairs, etc. And so we're going to look at those, and we're going to know those are always going to be there, okay? And those exist, like I said, in the House and in the Senate. A select committee is going to be different from that. A select committee is going to be a committee that is going to be there for a specific purpose, and once that purpose is over, it's going to kind of dissolve. So there was a committee on the JFK assassination. We probably don't need congressmen focusing their energy on that today, and so that committee obviously has disbanded. There was one to investigate what happened during 9/11. There was one to investigate the Benghazi attacks with Hillary Clinton. If you want to go back and check that out, those exist for a small amount of time, and then they go away. So they are temporary committees, a select committee. Joint committees are going to have members of both houses involved, but bigger than that, I want to talk about a conference committee, because if there's going to be one on the exam, I'm betting it's a conference committee. The conference committee is going to be, we're going to talk in a separate video about how a bill becomes a law, okay? And it's going to go the whole process through the House of Representatives, and after it passes the House of Representatives, it gets sent to the Senate. And the Senate has a chance to mark it up, say, oh, we like what you did here, but we don't like what you did here, and they're going to vote on it. And that bill is going to go back to the House of Representatives, and the House is going to say, oh, well, we like this improvement here, but we don't like this, and they vote on that. And it can go back and forth, and it could take years, right? Well, to avoid that, basically, once it's gone through both houses, the bill, what's going to happen is some members of the House, some members of the Senate are going to get together in a conference committee. And the conference committee is going to bang out all the differences right there and compromise everything there so that both houses can pass a clean bill and not be marked up, and it's the identical bill that can then be sent to the president. So that's the purpose of the conference committee, is to kind of compromise out the House and the Senate, make sure that we have the same bill, they can pass it and move it forward. Okay, and then we have legislative oversight committees. Legislative oversight is important. Legislative oversight is going to be, they're going to monitor the bureaucracy and the execution of the laws. So they're going to pass laws, the House and the Senate will. They're going to pass the bills, send them on to the president signs them, all that stuff. But then the implementation of those laws is going to be watched by legislative oversight. And so they're going to make sure, is it happening the way we intended? Is it being executed the way we intended? Is it having the consequences that we intended? So they can then look at laws and say, they can amend laws, they can go in later and say, this isn't happening the way we want it to, and pass a new law, get rid of the laws. And so they can go in and they can just kind of watch, is what's supposed to be happening with what we voted on? That's going to be legislative oversight. Okay, a few more duties of our congressmen is they're representatives of the constituents. They're the voice of the people. Okay, they are servants of the constituents. So they're supposed to be doing what the constituents want them to do, voting the way that they would want them to vote, okay? And we're gonna talk a little bit about this in a few minutes, about being a delegate for the people or for voting in different ways. And we're gonna talk about reasons why they do different directions there. But then most of all, congressmen are politicians. That's just kind of the nature of things. And so it is said that once a member of the House of Representatives is elected, he needs to start fundraising almost immediately, because he's only got 2 years before that next before that next election comes up. So he's got to be getting money into what's called his war chest so that he can compete in the next election almost immediately. So they're campaigning almost year round, every single year, where the Senate is maybe not quite as much. And so that's just kind of maybe a disadvantage, or however you would choose to look at it, maybe an advantage of being a member of the House of Representatives. Okay, so as a congressman, there are 4 different ways that you may be voting. And you may get kind of a badge, not like an official badge, but kind of a label as being one of these types of voters. There's trustees and delegates, partisans and politicos. Okay, and the first one is the trustees. What you're going to do as a trustee would be you vote your conscience. Okay, and so you are going to go in, you are going to say, this is the way that I think I should vote on this bill. That's a trustee. And so you're not going to think about how the people want you to vote. You're not going to think about how the party wants you to vote. You're going to think about what's best, how am I going to be able to face myself in the mirror at the end of the night. And so that's going to be voting as a trustee. Okay. Now voting as a delegate is going to be, I am not going to care what I think. I am going to vote how my people want me to vote. Okay, and so the constituents of my district, this is how they would vote if it was their vote. And so this is how I am going to try and vote, how they would want me to vote. Now, a partisan is going to be somebody who is going to look to their party and say, how do you want me to vote? And I'm going to vote with my party. Okay, now what will wind up happening is very, very few people become a trustee or a delegate or a partisan. What we wind up with politicos, and that's going to be kind of a combination of the 3. So maybe there's a law coming up on abortion rights, and the congressman happens to be pro-life. He is going to his district may be pro-choice, but he is pro-life, and therefore he's going to use his conscience and vote as a trustee. Or maybe there's a healthcare law coming up, and he doesn't believe that the United States government should be dictating healthcare to people, but the people of his district are saying, we need healthcare, we can't afford it, or we don't, maybe he's from a poorer district who are suffering, and he's going to say, I know that I don't necessarily believe this, but I'm going to vote for it because that's how the people of my district would want me to vote. And then maybe there's a law coming up that he doesn't have like this personal stake in, and he's going to look to his party leaders and say, how do you want me to vote? And he's going to vote for that direction. Okay, so 4 different ways: trustees, delegates, partisans, and politicos. And this is going to impact each and every law that comes before them, every bill that comes before them. How are they going to vote? Okay, and so it's not easy just, okay, this is how I'm going to vote because I think it's the best. There are things that come into this, because if you just always vote as a trustee and you go against what your district wants all the time, well, you're not going to get reelected. If you always vote with your delegates, okay, as a delegate, then yeah, the people might like you, but guess what? The party isn't going to give you any money to run, and now you're easy pickings for a challenger to come up, okay? And if you always vote with your party, then are you really doing what's best for you and what's best for your people, okay? So it's one of those, you have to have that balance of those 3 different things as you're voting as a congressman. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up right there. Like I said, we're going to do a second video on how a bill becomes a law, and we're going to get a lot in pretty deep there. It's not going to be like 8th grade when you had to just sing the Schoolhouse Rock song and then you had it. We're going to get in a little bit deeper than that. But for now, that's kind of a brief overview of what our Congress looks like. We're going to dive in a little bit more to especially the House of Representatives, their committees, and some stuff in class. We're going to look at gerrymandering in class. But for now, you kind of got a little bit of a handle on Congress. My friends, keep doing what you're doing. Keep studying for those tests. Keep studying for those quizzes. Keep doing those one-pagers. All that little stuff that's going to make you successful come May 24th. My friends, it's us versus the test. If you are struggling, make sure that you come see me. If you see a friend struggling, make sure that you encourage them, have them come see me. Come along with them. Make sure you're coming to the reviews. Make sure that you're doing the work that you're going to make you successful on May 24th. Get that 3, get that 4, get that 5. We'll see you tomorrow in class. Have a great night, my friends.